Hey guys, Alec, Peirce, Scuba, vintage Scuba. Now this is kind of funny. We're going to talk about catalogs, Scuba catalogs today. This is a typical catalog. You've seen them. Colorful, glossy, lots of pretty pictures on it. Girls inside, attractive looking girls in bathing suits. All the gear there, everything is explained. That's a typical catalog. Now it's interesting, just as I was starting to think about this, that catalogs are vintage. Just catalogs. You go into a dive store now and you say, do you have a catalog of your latest equipment? No, sir. You just go online. And it won't be very long. I mean, this is 2022, right? It won't be very long before, if you have a scuba diving gear catalog, you will have a vintage item. It's like a black telephone, black dial telephone, you know? Anyway, so that's this is not new, but it's typical of a new catalog. Lots of pretty colors and glossy paper and lots of gear and all that kind of stuff. However, you haven't seen one of these before. I know you haven't seen one because there are darn few of them around. This particular catalog is special in several reasons. First of all, it's 1955. There were very few catalogs, if any, around in 1955. A couple of the catalogs that were out at this particular time were a sort of a catalog textbook. Okay. Both U.S. divers and Healthways and Boyd and Sportsways, they all produce a little book like this, a little, I think that's 8.5 by 5.5 book, like this, stapled, simple. And what they did is they would start up by saying, welcome to the sport of scuba diving, an exciting world that lays for you, in store for you, exploring shipwrecks and spearfishing on the wonderful reefs of the world. They start like that. And they say, this book is designed to help you enter the sport safely and ensure that your equipment that you're using is good equipment because it's made by Voight or whatever. That's the way it would start off. And then we say, page 1 will tell you how to scuba dive safely. Yes, it was a textbook. Because there were no really good textbooks. There were a few, but they weren't very good. So these manufacturers, U.S. divers, you know as Aqualung, or Healthways, or Voight, or Decor, they have a little booklet like this, and they would explain how to scuba dive. And then when I said, now, when you use the mask, be sure that you spit in it, which we don't do anymore, rub it around and give it a rinse before you, so it doesn't fog up. And they say, and when you choose your mask, be sure that you look at one of these and it will have a list of the 3 or 4 Decor masks available, you see. So it was a sort of a textbook and a catalog at the same time. Now this is not like that. This particular one, Dive Master, is called Dive Master by the Dive Master Company, Corporation. It's different, a little bit different. There's no learn how to scuba dive so much in here. This is a list of equipment. Now the reason this is different is simple. Dive Master did not manufacture anything. It was a very well-known company, big name, and very popular among vintage collectors because Dive Master equipment is quite rare. And with the name Dive Master on it, quite rare. But what they did is they would get equipment from a dozen other manufacturers, you see, and put it in here and sell it. So they were kind of a wholesaler, retailer type of thing. They would get some equipment from Healthways and some from U.S. divers, some from Boyd and so on. And they would then make a catalog showing that equipment. And this is their catalog showing all those bits and pieces of equipment. They didn't make it. It's not really their own, but they would have in a catalog. And then if you're a diver, you could flip through it and you could find an item that you wanted. Scuba tanks on here, and you got to order it. It was a catalog number D2C. D2C, that's the catalog number. Now the catalog numbers are 16 letters long. You know? D2C. And you order D2C, please send me one of those, and you pay your $195. And that was for 2 tanks, complete scuba, regulator, harness, the whole darn thing. And they would ship it to you. So that was what Dive Master was all about. But it's kind of interesting because, again, it's quite rare, and they had a lot of different equipment. And a lot of the equipment you don't see anymore. You certainly don't see it in catalogs. For instance, it's not very often in a scuba equipment catalog that you can go into the catalog and buy a compressor. Not very often. The ordinary diver doesn't buy compressors. But the ordinary diver in the old days, there was no dive store. Right. So if you wanted to get your tanks filled, you had really only 2 choices. You went to the local fire department and you bribed them. Yeah, that's what I did. I would say, listen, guys, when you need someone to go down into the Scugog River, in the town that I lived in called the Scugog. Anyway, and recover something that's lost, whatever it is, I'll be happy to do that for you. Yeah, so here's my name and my phone number, and you leave it with them. And now, only thing I need some air fills. Can I get an air fill? Oh, yeah, we can do that. And they would give you air fills free for a little while. But then the chief would find out, and then he was like, hey, you're going to charge 25 cents for an air fill. That way that Peirce guy gets away with 3 air fills. So I end up paying 25 cents for an air fill at the party. And the other way you could do it is you would buy your own compressor. And a lot of guys did that. A lot of divers, certainly in remote areas or in the city, sometimes in the city they would buy their own compressor, you see, and they would fill their own tanks, then they would fill other guys' tanks for money. And that helped to pay for the compressor. Because the compressors weren't cheap. I mean, here's a compressor here that would fill the tank and so on, and that's $398 for the whole compressor. Yeah, the whole darn thing. The filters cost more than that now, but anyway, so that's a typical example of what the dive master had. And there are a bunch of cameras in there. You see a bunch of cameras in there? Yeah, Kevin's going to get some close-ups of some of these. And there's about 12 or 13 cameras, and none of them are dive master. They're U.S. divers and all the different kind of makes there. They have water skis, yeah. How to cover all the bases. And they have my favorite mask in here. You see the mask with the single snorkel up here. And then for $1.50 more, you can get it with 2 snorkels. This is my first mask with double snorkel. And I could buy this one easily. I had the money for that one, but I had worked and worked and worked till I had that extra $1.50 so I could get the double snorkel mask. Because I was going to be a frogman like Mike Nelson. I had to have the professional model. But anyway, so this is typical of a very, very early scuba catalog. Let me just show you some of the scuba gear that is in here. Here's some of the old regulators. Dive Air regulator. You vintage collectors will know about Dive Air, a company, LG Arpin, up in New Jersey, I think. They made a very good regulator that was sold through Healthways called the Dive Air. So that was the regulator you could buy, and tanks, and what's at the very back? Oh, weight belts, and all kinds of accessories. Dive knives, and bits and pieces for the regulator. You get parts for the regulator, because if your regulator needed to be serviced, or if something went wrong with it, you couldn't take it to the local dive store to get it fixed. There was no local dive store. So you would call up Dive Master and say, oh, I need a T, and I need this, and some hoses, and you fixed it yourself. Yeah. Not supposed to do that anymore. Anyway, and there's some more regulators there. The story about ER cross, well, all kind of compressors we talked about. So this is a scuba catalog from the Stone Age of diving. That's a term, by the way, that Kevin made up, and I kind of like it. Stone Age of diving. 1955 Dive Master Catalog. I thought you might enjoy seeing that little bit of story, comparing the 2 catalogs. And this is not brand new. The catalogs today, from 2000, if there are any, are crazy. Thick, lots of glossy pictures, lots of pretty girls and good gear and so on. But there's a big difference. Anyway, I thought you might enjoy seeing that. Dive Master Catalog from the Stone Age of scuba diving. Hope you enjoyed that. Alec Peirce, Vintage Scuba. Take care.